It's 1976, and Muguang has been assigned as the army cook for the commander's residence. He's working for Commander Pai to be precise, and he's been drilled that serving the commander's house should be taken as seriously as serving the country. Commander Pai is a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, a hero, and he expects perfection. Muguang is a hard worker. He has sworn to be diligent in his field, and while his comrades often tease him for it, Commander Pai takes notice. His efforts pay off during the ubiquity reduction campaign. Many workers are struck off the roster, but Muguang is spared. Muguang goes on about his duties. The commander's wife has taken an interest in him, but she tries hard not to let it show. On one occasion, she swiftly hides her binoculars before Muguang sees her, pretending she's just standing by the window, lost in thoughts. One day over dinner, the commander tells his wife he'll be gone for a month on a top-secret mission. He has his resentments about his current position in the rear division, but his service on this mission could propel him to something better. Muguang is cleaning up the fireplace while Suyan is in the dining room. Suddenly, she picks up the plaque and drops it, causing Muguang to rush to retrieve it. She beats him to it and tells him that moving the plaque means that she needs his assistance. On a different day, Muguang finds the plaque on the stairwell railing, but he remembers he's not supposed to be on the second floor without Commander's Pai orders. He decides to follow Suyan's orders and reports to her room. Her room is dark, and she asks him to help with the overhead light switch. Her other request is that he refers to her as Noonim when it's just the two of them. Being in her room makes him uncomfortable, but he can't leave without her permission. Suyan asks him about his greatest hope, and he divulges that he'd like to get promoted so his wife and child can come live in the city. Eventually, she lets him return to his station, but not without letting him know that whenever she moves the plaque, he's got to answer. Muguang comes back from the fields to meet the plaque out of place. It's late evening and he hesitates, but Suyan wants him to follow her upstairs. She decides he'll need to wash up before he attends to her, so Muguang dutifully goes to do that. When he reports back, her room is enveloped in darkness, and he pleads with her to turn on the lights. She refuses at first, but when she does, he averts his eyes because she's scantily dressed. With her permission to speak, he admits that he's scared of the commander and the party. Suyan is disappointed and walks out. Muguang knows Suyan is trying to seduce him, but he takes pride that he resisted her temptation. Suyan complained about Muguang to his commander warden. She wants the warden to fire and replace the cook. The warden confronts Muguang about his poor service, but Suyan obviously doesn't give the commander the full details. Muguang has until the next morning to change Suyan's mind, or else his life is ruined. 5 years earlier, Muguang ran a fertilizer production company. While the owner was sick, he couldn't enlist in the army because he had to care for his sick mother. But when the option to admit her to a hospital arose, he was finally sent out. Those who didn't join the army faced discrimination. Serving the country was seen as the highest honor. Muguang's mother wanted a daughter-in-law before her passing, but for that to happen, Muguang needed to get promoted to an officer in the army. His fiancé's father took pity on him and gave out his daughter on the promise that Muguang would eventually get promoted. He was in the restroom feeling sorry for himself when he overheard that there was a job vacancy in the commander's residence, and it's a fast way to promotion. He managed to catch the warden's attention and got the job as a cook for the commander's residence. Now that position is hanging by a thread. Muguang tries to get back in Suyan's good grace, but she proves difficult. He's bound by his oath to serve his people, and dutifully strips off his clothes when Suyan demands him. It's the only way he won't get fired. Unclad, she still threatens him, and he does what she'd hinted at from the start. He goes down memory lane while he's intimate with Suyan. Suyan wants him, but his wife doesn't. She just wants him to get promoted. Satisfied with Muguang's work ethic, Suyan tells the warden not to send in a replacement as discussed. On his way to the market, Muguang decides to stop for a smoke. A comrade approaches him and teases him, grabbing his privates. The comrade knows the commander is away, and that means Muguang can mess around with his wife. Muguang punches the guy in response and threatens to be more violent should there be a next time. Next time comes, but he's the one at the receiving end. Several soldiers beat him up and he's told not to snitch or else there'll be consequences. Muguang tries to end his affair with Suyan, but she proves to be more dangerous than all his comrades combined. They have sex and his Newman seemingly passes out afterward. A billion thoughts race through his mind as he contemplates what to do, but she eventually wakes up and he scolds her. Suyan mentions fate doesn't scare her, and she has no regrets. Muguang shows up late for his duties the next day, but Suyan isn't mad. She believes it's her turn to serve the people. She's made breakfast and feeds him with it. She goes on to take care of him, clipping his nails, balming his wounds, and swabbing his ears. He learns she can't leave the residence, and she believes it's not because Commander Pai values her, it's because he doesn't want to get divorced a second time. Muguang successfully sneaks her out of the barracks and buys her a pair of shoes because she has none. They explore the countryside and return home to explore their bodies in the laundry room. Commander Pai returns unexpectedly, and he can't be fooled. He shoots Muguang, intending to hurt Suyan as well. Muguang jolts out of bed and runs to the commander's residence. He finds Suyan crying because she had a nightmare. She promises to promote him to an officer and wishes he were her husband instead of the commander. Over drinks, Suyan tells Muguang how she came to be the commander's wife. She was a female soldier who caught his attention with her intelligence. His manhood got injured during a war, but he still pleaded with her to marry him. Commander Pai calls Commander Warden to check on his residence. The warden gets there and peeps through the window. What he finds is a drunk Suyan making Muguang do silly stuff. The rain drives him away. If he'd been there any longer, he'd have seen something more shocking. While running errands, Muguang learns there's trouble at the border. That explains why his comrades were at the training ground earlier, some getting loaded on a truck. He returns to the residence with an air of entitlement, and it leads to a brief argument between him and Suyan. The tension dissipates after sex. Muguang wants to quit his job as a cook and work on the base because he can't face the commander when he returns. The barracks are empty, meaning Suyan and Muguang are locked in. The security guards and the warden are all on the training ground. They have enough food supplies to last them a month and the privacy of the house to do whatever they like to each other. 3 days later, Muguang wants to do more than just have sex against Suyan's wishes. In the process of retrieving his clothes, he accidentally breaks the commander's figurine. Suyan tries to call the authorities, but Muguang fights back. They have each other in a chokehold when Suyan admits she'd purposely put the figure in his clothes, so it would break when he tries to retrieve his clothes. Suyan proposes marriage. It's impossible, but they both entertain the idea. Suyan won't forget Muguang, and to prove so, she breaks the commander's portrait that hangs over her bed. Now they've both broken something that belongs to the commander. They start tearing the house apart, trying to prove which one of them is a greater anti-revolutionist. Unfortunately, a soldier is spying on them through the window while they act up. After he's seen enough, he runs off. Suyan picks up the plaque, but that's where Muguang draws the line. So she can spare it, he concedes and agrees to name her the greater anti-revolutionist. He also has to confess that her love for him is greater and stronger than his love for her. Muguang is out in the fields, distracted by the moon. Suyan joins him with a plate of food, and they lie on a blanket facing the stars. She confesses that she might be pregnant. She's not sure, but it does nothing to quell Muguang's panic. Commander P will return home the following day, and it's obvious Muguang is terrified. He wants to go home to his family, and Suyan promises to make that happen. The affair will stay a secret, and he can return home. But when he leaves, he has to stay home until he gets a letter from the base. It's their last night together, so she expects it to be memorable. By morning, the truck is waiting for Muguang. He wonders if he'll ever see his Nunim again. On his way out, he sees Commander Pai returning. Commander Pai meets his house in disarray with his wife waiting for him at the top of the stairs. Muguang goes home. It's been 5 years, and he's still not an officer. It's the perfect excuse to abstain from his wife because he'd sworn to her in blood that he would get promoted after just 6 months. Muguang eagerly waits for a letter or a telegram that isn't coming. It starts to drive him crazy, and he takes it out on his son one fateful day. His vacation is over, but he hasn't been called back to base. His father-in-law calls him a failure and regrets giving his daughter to him. Muguang returns to base without being called. During the commander's military talks, South Korean soldiers brutally attacked 2 U.S. soldiers. The fallout is severe. The commander's division is being dissolved, but the commander will be promoted. That explains why the barracks are empty. The soldiers weren't on the training ground. They were laid off, including the warden. Muguang can kiss that promotion goodbye. Muguang becomes erratic even after he's warned to stay away from the commander's residence. The commander knows about the affair, but chooses to spare him. The warden shows up with good news. Thanks to Suyan, Muguang and his family will work at the largest electricity plant in the city. He will manage the plant and must report to his new station in 2 days. Muguang is honored with an award and celebrated by his comrades. On his way to his new assignment, Muguang, clearly obsessed, wants to return to the lion's den. His warden, none the wiser, thinks it's harmless if he salutes the commander one last time. Plot twist: the warden knew all along. In exchange for his silence, he asks Muguang to put in a good word for him. The warden is facing discharge, just shy of becoming a battalion warden. He needs that promotion for his family. Suyan is heavily pregnant and tells Muguang to inform the warden that while she can't stop him from getting discharged, he should come to her for help afterward. On their way back to the truck, Commander Pai, who's been watching them from the window upstairs, fires several rounds. 15 years later, Muguang is managing the plant. He leaves work one day and goes to see Suyan. She leaves him hanging by the door, sending him a note through the soldier on guard. Pissed, he returns the plaque she gave to him years ago and walks away.